All right, everybody, as we continue forward here, we just hashed out our roughly our composition. We're just kind of plotting in some objects and things really roughly right now. We just want to keep that in mind, right? We're just placing things real general. We're not being too critical about the details and stuff just yet. So, the next area that I'm going to focus on, actually, I'm going to stay with this bottom section here when I'm looking at the stuff. We're really placing these objects in because all these interior settings for all these television and film series and things that we love, stuff that really helps the characters be established in reality is where they are in location in a space, right? And how the directors and cinematographers kind of compose those areas. So right now in the scene, and without giving any spoilers away, right, Samuel L. Jackson's character sitting here at a diner with another character. They're having some food after a really, really long day. I'll just put it flatly like that. But, they've ordered food. They have all these things out in front of them, and they're just kind of talking. And this is a scene that's getting set up before something really, really wild's about to happen in this diner. So I'm going to focus my energy towards this almost like little still life that we have set in front of this character. So I'm just taking a look here, everybody, at what we have. So far, we've placed those objects real generally, and now I'm going to go in and tighten up some stuff just with some darker values, and we are slowly on the way now to adding more detail and things. But we're just gonna place in some darker values and kind of readjust some things in here. And I'm just using a sort of charcoal brush in my iPad and things right now. So I'm just going through here in these negative spaces and trying to get this stuff a little more accurate. And I'm, again, still working pretty quickly. And other things as I'm moving forward, if I notice a need to correct anything, I can. I'm going to actually bring this cup over just a tad, and we will adjust this stuff too later on. But we're just working through this entire space right here. So just kind of going through, make some stuff a little darker. I'm trying to pay attention to the shadows and things on the table. Like I noticed down in here, the table's like kind of glossy because I see some reflection from the shirt is showing up down here. So that's just something I'm being aware of too as well when I'm going through this stuff. And that's any little detail stuff that some of you might be able to see upon kind of first glance when you're going through your work in this way. So I am just kind of making this corner a little darker, and we will adjust things as we move forward. But let's see, go over here. I like this really nice shadow here too on the wall, so I'm going to try to get that a little bit more accurate as well, based off of, again, I'm using my image as reference here, so I'm just kind of going through here, get this built a little bit better. So get that to be a little darker. So I'm actually going to color pick here and use some of that nice brown. And just moving forward, we're getting somewhere. Just that little corner is looking a lot better. And let's see, I'm going to pick some other things here too. We're going to go into the upper quadrant with these chairs. This is kind of a fun space as well. I'm going to color pick here and go forward and add some more accurate color and some texture to these chairs as well. So I'm just moving along, going kind of quick here just to show all of you as a demonstration. Take your time with these works as you're working on this project. And I think, the biggest things that all of you are going to learn through this, and some things I always learn by sort of creating master copies, is like compositionally, especially from television and film, is that every single scene is very much composed a lot of the times, depending on the directors and things. There's a lot of thought put in to how these characters and these stories develop on screen, and how these folks lead us through these stories, in that way. So I'm going to keep color picking this stuff. Again, like we said, a lot. This is just so dark back here. So I'm trying to figure out here too, calling on my knowledge of the Impressionists and how they might have worked during this time, of just quickly plotting in where there's shadows, and things here, and letting these things live how they want to, and not being too involved with the details and things of this work at this point. So I'm just moving around just this section, and I'm going to show all of you here in a second. We're going to do a little compare and contrast. This figure back here's got like this sort of plaid kind of shirt, so I'm going to grab some of this color and things. So we're going to compare and contrast the left side of this composition versus the right side so far, because we've obviously spent a little more time on the left side right now. Just going to kind of go through here and blast this stuff in here, get a little bit lighter as well. And what's nice about this image that I have, and your image that you might be using, it might even be more simple or pared down than this, but the one that I'm using right now is like the focus is very much on Samuel L. Jackson's character in the foreground. So that these things in the background, if they are a little more vague or a little more blurry or a little softer, that's completely fine for what I'm doing, because the emphasis is, again, on these other characters. So as I'm going through this, everybody, I'm still looking at my bottom image here and using that very much as a reference point for where I'm placing these values and things too. So this is obviously a different process than just, let's say, tracing over top of this photo, which you could easily do digitally, or I've shown sort of some things in the past about how to emulate certain kinds of shapes and stuff with analog materials like tracing paper and things. But right now I am just kind of thinking too about how even some of these quick little blocks of color really help inform background spaces and things. So I'm just placing that stuff in here. And I've got these chairs. Get this to be a little darker here. So I'm just using this sort of charcoal brush that I've got to add this texture. Like I said, I want this to kind of look a little softer in some of these areas. And then when we get in the details of the face and things later this week, that's when you'll really start to see some stuff click. So these chairs do as well seem to have like kind of a metal edge to them, or sort of the structure here. So I'm going to make my brush a little smaller and kind of plot these in a little bit more. Some of this darker value, this darker area in the background. So we're very much in this diner, but as you can tell, is like as you move away from this character, things are getting a little softer because they're not as in focus, right? The camera's not in focus as well. So this chair back here actually is going to get quite a bit darker as well. So we're going to kind of tone that one down a little bit so it doesn't stick out as much, but I haven't really put the highlights in here yet. I'm not worried about that, but as you can see, where we are right now with this, I'm going to keep moving forward on these booths, but as you can see, that background's really starting to establish itself now. So I'm going to take a break on that and jump around, and that's something I like to suggest to all of you as well, is like try not to get too involved with one specific area of your work. Try your best to jump around and try to build that habit so that you work on things kind of more evenly, so everything will all of a sudden cross the finish line at the same time. It's something that's really easy to tell when artists get really focused in on one area versus other areas in their composition. If that's maybe not intended, it's a subtle kind of subconscious thing that it's so easy to point to in artists' work, is that a lot of times they will focus on like the faces or the details of some of the objects, and they won't pay attention to these other things in the background or the setting that help really place these things in a space as well. So I'm going to focus in on these booths now. I'm just going to quickly color grab here, and I'm going to keep using this process of sort of color grab, and then we're going to keep moving forward with this stuff. So I'm just trying to fill these things in a little bit more, and we are only about 20 minutes or so overall in this drawing, and we're already making some serious progress here. But folks, I also want to just keep in mind here is that I'm using obviously a tablet here to record this demonstration, but the principles of what I'm doing don't really go away if you start using your analog materials. So I just want to kind of, reference that moment here, is that the process of what I'm doing is still going to be the same if you just have a sketchbook and paper. You're just looking at the value relationships of what's light and dark, and I'm going through and looking at, like, what areas are a little bit darker, and I'm just making quick movements through this space here. And if we have to adjust things, like I'm already noticing, like this figure's shoulder is much higher up here than it is in my original sketch. So like that's something we'll adjust later. That the shoulder will probably actually be about in there. So I just like to work quickly and doing my best to as well as be sort of accurate. So I'm gonna let that darker value show up here. Color pick. I'm gonna make my pressure of what I'm applying here is going to be a little bit lighter. So now I'm just trying my best to build this shadow back here, because there is areas of it that are really dark, and then areas that are a little bit lighter as well. So we're just adding a little bit more pressure as we're moving on top of this area here. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of this over top of this whole background.